I had some slides, but they're not going to work out, which is okay because it's. Oh, are you coming up here?
No.
Huh? No. Okay, it's not going to work out. And you know what? It's okay because it's kind of better for me that you have no visual context for understanding what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm Storm. I'm a writer maker. I write musicals, among other things, including this speech. I'm going to talk about player agency in immersive theater. There's so much to say about it, which is why I wrote it down. I really want to be efficient because I'm a babbler. Okay. Player agency. It's one of the most important topics to you. The immersive makers of our time. And me too. It's 2018. I do want to know that I can make real choices, that those choices will eventually matter in my life, in others' lives, and to the systems that surround us. We have an opportunity burden, I like to call it, as creatives right now to envision the new tactics in the fight to end oppression. Immersive storytelling, for me, has a major part to play in ending oppression. Immersive work proves that there are new stories to tell, that there's more than one way to tell a story, and that it does take more than one voice to tell a story. I'm going to talk about Small Hat. Universe is a Small Hat. It's an immersive musical game created by Cesar Alvarez. You don't have a slide to picture him, but he also has curly hair and a very sweet face. So over the years of developing Small Hat, I have personally performed in a variety of different roles, also as associate director for the last iteration, which was at Sarah Lawrence. But before Sarah Lawrence, we were play testing this piece every Monday night at Baby Castles on 14th Street in New York, which is an independent video game gallery, which really worked well for us. It didn't have any of the context of the theater, so it was perfect. When I'm at parties and stuff, it takes like an hour and a half to describe this piece. So I'm just going to give you a general overview and then talk about some specifics, and know that there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm not going to be able to talk about. Okay, so first, Cesar. Cesar, he's well practiced at taking really big risks in his work. Came to musicals on a whim after composer school. And after a few musicals, he decided he wanted to write a musical about space, which he said was very, very boring. I never saw that part. He said it was about two astronauts kind of like floating in space, being bored together, which was whatever. He said he didn't like it. He quickly realized that the story that he really wanted to tell required full-bodied audience participation, that science fiction required immersion. So he went off to like redefine immersive theater, to find new ways of using game design, Nordic LARP, and the form of the musical to generate a storytelling method that both privileges the building of community bonds while also interfacing with our multiple identities. Like strategy adventure games, he saw a structural similarity to musicals, that it's a cut scene and then interactive gameplay, cutscene gameplay. And musicals, it's like scene, song. You burst into these moments of like unrealistic play, singing. So whatever, he mixed the two. He wanted to see something that was a musical, popped into song, but then what was in between that was more like immersive gameplay than like a scene. He wanted to make an immersive theater that was more than just ambulatory or just a walking theater, but an emergent co-creative narrative. So Universe is a Small Hat. It's a 100-player narrative game musical. As a player, when you get there, you arrive and you're informed that it's 100 years from today. You've chosen to leave Earth, you've applied and been accepted to join a new space colony. You're leaving Earth with the founder, our charismatic spiritual leader, and the AIs who help run the ship, who are the performers. We're gonna travel on the ship together towards our new home, Gliese 581G, with hopes of creating a new, more peaceful society. So at the beginning of the piece, it's an extended extensive 8-step process that's designed specifically to help you play the game, to learn how to play the game. And this is crucial for us. A smooth intake makes a good show. During this step, you get the pillars of that overarching story I told you, but you also have an opportunity to create your own name, your own character, and your own backstory that's within the world. You, the player, are immediately both rooting yourself in the narrative and also testing its boundaries. Early on, this was a perfect place for people to troll us. Tough, real tough. We got a lot of like Luke Skywalkers, a lot of Chewbacca's, a lot of comedy. So we really didn't want to see that as a failure, but as an almost success, because to troll takes energy, it takes agency. People who troll are people who feel that they can do that. So he would say that if people aren't playing the game how you want them to play, it's an issue of your design, not them. They're being themselves, and it is possible to design for that. One way to account for trolls is to laugh, right? We found that every time we took ourselves very seriously, so would the players, which was the opposite of what we wanted to do. When you take yourself seriously, it means that you're willing to conform to dominant trends. That's not us. We're looking for this type of work to be a place where you're not asked to conform. So during intake, you also, this is one of my favorite parts, you practice in small groups the ground rules of consent that hold the piece together. You practice how a player might actually stop gameplay if necessary and what is and isn't appropriate touching. There's no downplaying the importance of this step in creating player agency. If people don't feel safe, they don't feel agency. We know this. The act of carving out the time to collectively practice consent culture is radical, but it shouldn't be. Great. I think building agency sometimes first comes in acknowledging the impressions that are present in our outer world before asking people to find freedom from them, right? Code check. Y'all. Code check is another small but impactful step along the way. So Small Hat is a game you need to play with 2 hands. Each step is designed to help the player ease into the world. Letting go of your earthly possessions is a part of that, even if just for a few hours. We kept trying to speed it. We kept trying to speed it up, like get people faster through Code Check, but it didn't really work until we let it slow down. Until we created brackets around it that supported the length of time it took for people to let go of their earthly possessions, which was very hard for people. I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff in this show. A part of intake is also a test that you take. It's kind of like a personality test, but it tests how we think you might want to play the game. It's an important, just totally useful part in building agency. It makes people feel thought of, or at least it makes me feel thought of. In Small Hat, there are 5 major tracks you can test into: culturalist, theorist, healer, witness, and engineer. Each track is different, designed around the player type that is most likely to test into that occupation. Culturalists are often the most extroverted. Theorists are always a little heady. Engineers, often logical and active. I've found that immersive work can sometimes leave space for only one type of player, which is great for that type of player, but what about the rest of us? Diversity is real. I don't know if anybody's watched Planet Earth. Every single thing is different. It's specific, and it only works in an environment that is specifically tailored to support that. It's important to design your work, for me, in a way that relies on that diversity rather than seeking to simplify it, which is impossible. Myself, as a trans mixed Black artist, it's like incredibly difficult to find myself in work, immersive or otherwise. But immersive storytelling could be a sanctuary for so many if we continue to design for diverse audiences and design in a way that keeps audiences diverse. the biggest barrier I come across inviting people to this kind of work is the fear of alienation, fear of being singled out, but also the fear of being alone. During my time at Baby Castles, I played Calypso, which was the head AI for the witness track. So I'm going to talk about that for a little bit. Witnesses, they test into this track because they're shy. They want to play, but they want to play in the background. And it has been really important for us to create a space in the musical that's built for that. When you test into the witness track, you're given a phone, a real phone. It's not your phone, but it's connected to a closed system we call the Chronicle that's presented throughout the ship. So the witnesses get to be the journalists on the ship, the ones with camera phones, the seekers of truth, we call them. But they also create the entire social media that's present on the ship, which is very exciting. My experience with the witness track is that they are playing hard, maybe sometimes harder than the culturalists, because it's a play that suits them. Later in the show, I don't want to give too much away, but later we asked those witnesses, those shy witnesses, to go undercover as a member of the other occupations, like a culturalist or a theorist, which is great because they're playing a layered identity, which more closely resembles what we call real life, where none of us are just one thing or one character. We're all of these different systems cutting across each other. The witness track right now isn't working correctly. It's not quite right. We're not really sure why. Part of it is the budget, because we have none. So it's hard to get the phones working and the Chronicle working, everything working. But part of it is something else. Everybody who's designed it is kind of extroverted. So there's a little bit more for us to discover there, which is exciting. So the healers, when you test into the healer track, you're given a deck of cards referred to as the archetypal healing deck. Cesar took the basic tenets of tarot, adapted them into futuristic or current concepts. And when you test into the healer track, you are given this deck. Your AI teaches you how to give a reading, and then immediately you, the player, are giving readings to other players. It's incredible to see strangers sitting across from other strangers and watch as they weave together elaborate metaphysical connections from a deck of cards they received an hour ago. All of the dramaturgical ideas of the piece, all of the characters, everything is embedded in these 31 cards, and the players are asked to play with them, to rearrange them and see what they can find. We're essentially, or hopefully, giving the means of production, to use a labor term, the means of production. But spiritually speaking, I know we talked about that earlier, it means that the religion of the piece, the religion created within the piece, is crowdsourced. It's constantly being reinterpreted. It's constantly changing, and that is very exciting. I think that people want to be a part of the creation, and I think that they're also frustrated when they're not. After going through the intake process, you're on the ship with over 100 players and player performers pretending you're in space for 3 to 4 hours. At the end of the night, the connections you made are real. They do translate into the world outside. And for us, that's player agency, that it means more than just you are going to be yourself for us over this 3 hours, but rather you're going to take whatever it is that you've experienced and it has a place outside. So there's 5 major tracks, but what about people who are unsatisfied with their track? That's everybody's fear, right? What if I test into the culturalist, but I don't belong in the culturalist track? So there's space for that too. There's an unbordered track called the translators, who sometimes are people who want to hop out of theirs, they're not into their track, and sometimes it's people who are looking for such an unfixed or transient experience that they want the space to just create their own track, and people really hop into that translator track 2 feet in, I'll tell you. We also try to cast those that are usually supposed to be hiding in the background. stage management and crew are also playing with us. They're in red suits. Everybody can see them. Anybody can ask them a question. But they're also stringing together the narrative. They're telling the story, and that's exciting for them. Cesar, he calls it a party with a story, which I think is exactly our goal, because everybody wants to party, right? So I'm going to talk for a second about launch. When the ship starts at the beginning of the piece, the whole room is like shaking. It starts filling with all of this bright lights. There's light. It's crazy. But it was not always good. Before, it was bad. So we struggled to design it. For a while, nothing seemed right, but I think our struggle is useful. Because it was nothing. It was no structure. The launch was kind of music and a lot of milling. It was like, oh, okay, we're launching. But people didn't know what to do. So then we added choreography, which we hoped to intuitively teach to the audience members mid-song with no words, which did not work. Yeah. But we did find relief in rehearsal one day. We were all trying to figure out the piece, and we had our hands like shoulder. Okay, this is somebody, I'm putting my hand on their shoulder. We're making these geometric patterns as a collective or as a group. And someone just put their hands up in the air at a grid moment, and everybody else did it. Everybody's standing there now, hands in the air, and it worked. We had to scale back all that choreography. We had to take all that kind of stuff back because we had to get out of our own way. In some cases, the elegant solution that we're looking for, in most cases, in all cases, the elegant solution we're looking for is probably already in the room. Somebody in the room already knows what the piece needs. So now the launch is like rumble, rumble, hands up, blackout, lasers, dance party, which is great. It's really fun. Okay, so I just want to touch on another scene that's later in the piece. It's also a town hall. So this is a part of Small Hat where it's designed for the players to truly take over the piece, one of the many parts. And it's exactly how it sounds. It's an archetypal town hall. But in the piece, it's the players who are getting up in front of other players in character to talk about their experiences on the ship and their occupation. The non-player characters, we're supposed to like let go and back up and see what happens. And I'll tell you, there have been several legit in-game player rebellions during this scene. And I think that's because people want that. People want to rebel in our real life, and if they can't do it in our real lives, maybe they'll do it in this theater. Some of the most profound moments I've seen in theater have come from watching this scene. One night in particular, it was a play test where all of the theorists tested to be white men, which was just a part of the test at that particular moment. So during the town hall, they get up, they're explaining what they think we should do with our community, and people in the back felt enough agency to be like, no, like, hey, like, why are all the theorists white guys? They started like kind of, oh my God, and so quickly it went into chaos. Yeah, and so what happened in response to that chaos, I'll say first, Cesar, in the midst of this chaos, I'm freaking out. Everybody's rebelling. Cesar is hanging off the ladder like, woo! You like, tear it down, you know what I mean? Because that's the part of the work that is exciting when nobody knows what's going to happen. And that's really cool. So what did happen was that one of the players, who was a black man culturalist, he stood up towards the chaos and said, for some reason, they were entrusted with this task, so I choose to trust them. Everyone got really quiet. And then he turned around to the theorists, that panel full of white men, and said, now it's your responsibility to be worthy of that trust. I know, we were like, oh, woo! Somebody was like, damn. Yeah, you know what I mean? So no one could have anticipated that. No one could have planned it. It couldn't have been scripted, and it couldn't have been any more potent. The entire room changed just like this room did, and everybody knows it, and everybody felt it. Yeah, okay, so after the party is the after party, which is another really, it's such an important part of what we're trying to do, because it is a moment where it allows constant reflection on the piece. Every single time we do the piece, we get an after party. And in the after party, we talk about the piece. People are like, oh, you had an experience 2 hours ago with one of the other players in character. And you get to walk up and be like, hey, I'm really sorry I did that thing. Or, that was so wild. I never would have done that. But also, we get to ask really important questions and get feedback every single time about what our piece is doing to the people, capital T, capital P. I believe, and I think everybody in here believes, that immersive work has an important power. What we use that power to do could transform the very landscape of our lives, if we let it, if we wanted to. And if not us, then who, right? This form, because of the form, has unparalleled potential to make the metaphor of liberation tangible and embodied. We have developed the process of telling stories as humans because they're like little pockets of hegemony. They're like, they communicate something past the narrative and past the words, that this is the way it is and this is how you should feel about it. And so as immersive makers, I think it doesn't have to be that way for us. Nothing in our form is a given, and that excitement is valuable. So I just want to say at the end that, so Universe as a Small Hat is still in development. We're still really working on it. It's going to be performed again at the Philly Fringe Arts in 2019. So look out for that. And please come up to me and talk to me about the piece. I'm really good on one-on-ones. That's it. Thank you.